All right, so a hot topic right now is immigration policy. And these days, we're mostly talking about illegal immigration and what our policy should be about that. You'll find very few people who are concerned about a policy referring to legal immigration. So that's kind of where we are at this point. But all in all, there's about 1 million immigrants that come into the United States each year, made up of both documented and undocumented immigrants. In 2018, immigrants constitute 13.5% of the American population, which is about 22 million people. And that's the highest it's been since the early 20th century. Of that number, about half are believed to be undocumented. We don't have a precise number on that, and that number goes up and down depending mostly on how the American economy is doing. But these days, the main issue that you'll hear regarding immigration policy is the border and how much security should exist at the border. And it kind of pushes people into one camp or the other. You'll have one side that says build the wall, secure the border, be very restrictive. And then the other side these days, mainly on the left, that will say that the border should be open and unregulated. And that kind of goes along with the mentality that we are a global community now, and kind of moving beyond the idea of borders and nations. Another issue is amnesty. So most will agree that it is impossible to deport the millions of people that are here illegally already. And so is there a path toward legalization? Amnesty doesn't necessarily mean citizenship, but it can mean the waving of a magic wand and presto, you are now here legally. The other side says deportation for all of those who didn't follow the legal protocol and are here illegally. Birthright citizenship, which comes from the 14th Amendment, and that says that everybody who's born on American soil is a citizen. And of course that had to do with liberated slaves way back in the 1860s. Now it becomes an issue where we see undocumented immigrants having children in the United States who, by virtue of being born on American soil, become citizens. Not much movement on any kind of change on that policy at this point, especially because it's in the Constitution. Sanctuaries, like the state of California, have pressed the envelope a little bit on their willingness to cooperate with federal authorities who are trying to implement immigration policy. So what you should realize is that all immigration policy is at the federal level. No state has its own immigration policy or anything meaningful. But it is up to the states to cooperate with the federal government when it is attempting to execute immigration policy. So California, for example, has stated that, in fact, put it into law, that they will not cooperate with federal authorities on immigration policy. And there's even examples of the state of California thwarting the efforts of the state or of the federal government to execute immigration policy. And so that is a lawless act and is definitely going too far. But this is few and far between in terms of examples. Crime is always an issue, whether it be from violent crime or felonies or compliance to drug trafficking and human trafficking, that is accelerating as the border has become more porous, which is just one factor regarding trafficking. There's other factors involved than just the border. Economic issues come into play as well, because what you'll find is that many workers who come to the United States, both legal and illegal, will come for the work opportunities and then send the money that they earn back to their home countries, which is a drain on the American economy. And in terms of undocumented workers, many of them are working under the table, which means they're not forking over tax revenue. And so that would mean a fiscal loss for the government as well. The bottom line is that there's always a need for labor. The United States has always been a place where immigrants provide unskilled and skilled labor. And everybody involved needs labor. This keeps prices low, restricts inflation, and honestly provides opportunity for people to make a better life. And so you are eventually facing the the decision. You're looking at the humanity of the situation, people who are putting it all on the line to get a better life, or you're looking at the rule of law. And most of us will land somewhere in between. So here's a quick list of some of the immigration policies that we've had in the last couple of generations, and there's not much. So you have to go back to the 80s to see the last congressional law that represents comprehensive immigration reform. And this was supposed to be the thing that would end the whole issue. So illegal immigrants could get citizenship, which is, say, amnesty, if they learned English and had no criminal record. Border control was increased so that the problem would cease at that point. And then they also addressed the draw that brings illegal immigrants to America, which is work opportunities. And so employers were forbidden to hire illegal immigrants. The problem is that there was really no way for them to verify any paperwork or be sure whether someone was legal or not. And so because of that, the whole thing kind of fell apart as the border security didn't really pan out as was expected. So that was really the last time that Congress tried to do something about immigration. So Obama in 2014 decided to address the problem unilaterally through executive orders. And so he offered amnesty or legalization to certain undocumented children who were brought to America as children, which made them illegal. But if they didn't have any kind of issues and they had been here for a certain amount of time, then they would get amnesty. So this is what we call the DACA program, which refers to these dreamers. The congressional law that was proposed but never fulfilled was called the DREAM Act. So DACA stands for Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals. And so those people who had been here for a certain amount of time would not be removed. Obama also issued an executive order addressing those children's parents, which was DAPA. That executive order was struck down by the Supreme Court as Obama going too far on his executive power, which, constitutionally speaking, was a pretty clear bet, because clearly in Article 1, Section 8, it says that Congress has the power to make immigration law, not the president unilaterally. But they did leave DACA in place for the time being. That is until Trump became president, and Trump rescinded the DACA program by executive order. However, he did use it as leverage to try to get his border wall created and negotiated with Democrats for a long time on that issue. Another note on Trump's immigration policy was his travel ban, which had a couple of manifestations. The first one was struck down by the courts, and then he issued a second one that he called the watered-down version, but it basically put restrictions on immigration for people from certain countries, mainly those who support terrorism, North Korea and others that are hostile toward the United States. And this is in, of course, the backdrop of the Syrian refugee crisis, where Europe is come across a lot of problems and a lot of debate about whether or not they should take in those refugees. And so Trump has been pretty firm on not extending that program. He didn't necessarily rescind it either, but safe to say that Trump is very much more about security and limited immigration than President Obama was. So the politics of immigration are very complex, and honestly today most politicians completely dodge the issue, and there's some very stark reasons why. Democrats, it doesn't take a genius to figure out why they want to push more immigration, including illegal immigration. It's because Hispanics by and large vote for Democrats, and so every time somebody moves across the border into the United States, assuming you can get them the right to vote, you've got a whole lot of voters in the future for Democrats. Republicans are much more likely to say no to illegal immigration, and not necessarily legal immigration. Republicans have no issues on the surface of welcoming legal immigrants. Illegal immigrants they're going to make a stand for because of issues like the economy and national security, which are more Republican issues. But they also can't say anything because of political correctness. They're fearful of the charges of being racist and being smeared to death politically. to the point where they're just not going to bother and they're not going to say anything. However, with Republicans, it's a little more complicated because Republicans also have constituents that are factory owners and business owners who actually like the labor. They like the cheap labor that immigration and illegal immigration brings to the table. So the honest truth is that everybody likes immigration and illegal immigration. One group will admit it, the other group will not. And so for that reason, we get a lot of talking and not a lot of doing. And so, like I said, we have the fence, which is a way for Republicans to say, oh, we're trying to secure the border, but there's holes in it, so we're being prevented from finishing it, and then you get the talking going again. So where we are right now, illegal immigration continues to flood into America. There's little incentive for illegal immigrants not to come. We're getting to the point now where they're not being deported. They're able to go to school. They're able to get public benefits. And so there's really nothing stopping them. The only time we saw a drop in recent years of illegal immigration was when the 2008 financial panic happened and unemployment spiked way up and business was down. And so as an illegal immigrant, what were you going to do? You come to America and there wouldn't be any jobs waiting for you. So for a brief moment there from 2009 until 2012, we saw a slight drop in illegal immigration. But today it is back to where it's been in traditional trends in the last few decades.